My name is Jeffrey, and I never thought I would be in this situation. It all started one cold evening in October when I was coming home from work. At the time, I had no idea that this evening would be the beginning of the biggest nightmare of my life. I live in a small town where everyone knows each other. Serious crimes rarely happen here, let alone murder. But everything changed when people started disappearing in our city. Marion Clark, my neighbor, was the first to disappear. She just went for a walk with the dog, and no one saw her again. The police started an investigation, but there were no leads. Then several more people disappeared. John Smith, Lisa Brown, Tommy Johnson. All of them disappeared without a trace, leaving their relatives in despair. Fear gripped the city. People were afraid to go outside at night. I was coming home late that evening. The streets were empty, and only the shadows of the houses reflected in the light of the lanterns. I felt a chill that penetrated my bones, but what scared me the most was the silence. It seemed that something invisible was watching me. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. They were barely audible, but I felt them. Looking around, I didn't see anyone. My heart began to beat faster, and I quickened my pace. The steps also became more frequent. I started running without looking back, and only then did the footsteps disappear. When I reached my house, I was relieved. I quickly went inside, locked the door, and tried to calm down. But the feeling of fear did not disappear. I couldn't sleep that night because those footsteps kept echoing in my head. Something or someone was following me. The next morning, I felt tired and broken. Sleep did not come, and the anxiety did not disappear. I decided to go to the police and tell them about what happened last night. Perhaps it will help them in the investigation of disappearances. The policeman, whom I knew by the name of Michael, listened carefully to my story. He was tall, with gray hair and a look that radiated experience and determination. He wrote everything down in his notebook and promised to investigate. "Jeffrey, please be careful," he said in parting. "If you notice something suspicious, report it immediately." I returned home trying to stay calm, but with every hour my fear only grew. All these disappearances and those strange footsteps. Something was very wrong in our town. That evening I decided not to stay home. I invited my friend Tim, whom we have known since childhood. Tim always knew how to cheer up and dispel fears. "It's all nerves, Jeffrey," he said, sipping his beer. "Just relax. The police do all this." We sat on the veranda, talking about various trifles, trying not to think about the disappearance. But when it began to get dark outside, I felt that strange fear again. The streetlights came on, but instead of feeling safe, I only felt more watched. Suddenly, those steps appeared again. They were approaching from the darkness. Tim heard it too, and we both froze. The footsteps were getting closer, but we couldn't see anyone. "Who is there?" shouted Tim, but there was only silence in response. We decided to go inside, locked all the doors and windows. Tim pulled out his phone and called the police. But when we heard the sirens, the footsteps disappeared as suddenly as they appeared. Police arrived quickly but found nothing suspicious. Michael looked around the area, checked all the doors and windows, but there were no signs of a break-in. "Maybe you just thought it," he said, "but we will still keep an eye on you." Tim stayed the night, and we tried to sleep. But fear did not allow me to close my eyes. Something or someone was there in the darkness, waiting. That night, sleep never came. All my thoughts revolved around those footsteps and the missing people. Every time I thought I heard a sound outside the window, my heart began to beat wildly. The morning brought some peace, but the anxiety did not disappear. Tim, seeing my condition, decided to stay another day. We decided not to sit at home and went to a local coffee shop, hoping that a crowded place would help relieve the tension. We met a few more friends in the coffee shop. Sarah, Jack, and Rachel joined us, and we started discussing all the horrors that happened in our town. Sarah was a local journalist, and she had access to information that others did not. "The police don't have any concrete evidence yet," Sarah said, sipping her coffee. "But all these disappearances are not accidental. There is something in common between the victims. We just don't know what exactly yet." "Do you think this is a serial killer?" asked Jack. "I don't want to jump to conclusions without evidence," Sarah replied. "But everything looks very strange." Suddenly, Rachel, who had been silent before, said quietly, "I heard that there was something strange about each disappearance. The victims seemed to have seen or heard something before they disappeared. It made me remember those steps. Could they be related? My anxiety only increased. What exactly did they see or hear? Asked Tim. I don't know the details, Rachel replied, but maybe it means something. The conversation turned to other topics, but I couldn't get that information out of my head. Could it be that those steps were part of this terrible chain of events? When we got home, I decided to talk to Michael. Maybe the police had some new information. I called him and arranged to meet at the branch. Michael met me in his office, furnished with stacks of papers and photographs from the places of disappearances. He looked exhausted but determined. What do you know about these disappearances, Michael? I asked. We're working on it, Jeffrey, he replied. But so far, we do not have any concrete clues. The only thing that unites all cases is the same type of traces. It was as if someone had been watching them before they disappeared. My heart froze. It matched what I had heard. I told Michael about the steps, and he listened carefully. This is important information, he said. We will definitely consider this in the investigation. But be careful, Jeffrey. If you notice anything again, let us know right away. After talking with Michael, I felt a little calmer, but the anxiety was still in the air. I knew that there were many dangers ahead and that this nightmare was just beginning. When I got home after talking with Michael, I decided to tell Tim everything I had learned. He listened attentively and then offered, maybe it's worth installing cameras around the house. If someone is actually following you, we can see it. The idea was good, and we immediately got down to business. We bought several cameras and installed them around the house, connecting them to a computer so that everything could be monitored in real time. We spent the next few days trying to live a normal life, but the fear did not disappear anywhere. Every sound in the night made us wary. We constantly checked the cameras but did not notice anything suspicious. One evening, when Tim had already gone home, I decided to review the camera footage from the last day. While scrolling through the footage, I suddenly noticed something strange. A shadow appeared on one of the records, which quickly flashed behind the house. I stopped the video and tried to look at the details, but the shadow was too fast and blurry. A cold fear came over me. Was it a person, or maybe something else? I immediately called Michael and told him about the find. He promised to come the next morning to look over the records. The next day, Michael came with his partner, Joe. They took a close look at the video and agreed that it did look suspicious. We will set up additional patrols in your area, said Michael. But be careful, Jeffrey. If you see something suspicious, call immediately. That evening was quiet, but my anxiety persisted. I kept checking the cameras, expecting to see something new, and my fear was justified. Around midnight, I heard those footsteps again. They were approaching my house. My heart began to beat wildly when I saw a silhouette moving near the window on the camera screen. It was a person, but I couldn't make out the face. I immediately called Michael and told him about it. He promised to send a patrol immediately. In the meantime, I decided not to wait and check for myself what was happening. I took the flashlight and slowly approached the window, trying not to make any noise. When I looked out the window, I was filled with horror. There was a figure standing there looking straight at me. It was a man in dark clothes, with a hood hiding his face. Our eyes met, and I felt the chill seeping into my bones. The man suddenly turned around and started to run away. I opened the door and ran after him, but he disappeared into the darkness. The police arrived a few minutes later, but they found nothing. Michael looked excited and said that he must be the one they were looking for. Jeffrey, you have to be very careful, he said. We will keep you under constant surveillance, but this man is dangerous. I barely slept that night. The feeling that I was constantly being watched only intensified. I knew this nightmare wouldn't end until they found the person behind all these disappearances, and I felt that the next night could become even more terrible. The next day brought new fears and uncertainty. My neighbors, having learned about the night's event, became even more alert. No one felt safe. Michael left me his personal number so I could contact him at any time. I spent the day going through the camera footage, but I didn't find anything new. We all lived in constant fear, waiting for new events. In the evening, Tim came to see me again. We decided that it is better not to be alone. It's all getting too real, he said as we sat in the kitchen with cups of hot coffee. We must be careful. If that man shows up again, we have to be ready. We have collected a few essentials: flashlights, cell phones, and kitchen knives for self-defense. It wasn't easy, but we decided it was better to prepare. Night was approaching, and with it came fear. We turned off the lights in the house so as not to attract attention and prepared for a long night of observation. The cameras were on, and we were both keeping a close eye on the screens. Around midnight, I noticed movement on one of the monitors. It was the same figure that appeared the night before. The man was again wearing dark clothes and a hood. He slowly approached one of the windows and began to look around. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I showed the screen to Tim, and he knew we had to act fast. I picked up the phone and dialed Michael's number. He responded almost instantly. "Hez here, Michael. That man is at my house again," I said, trying to stay calm. "We're on our way, Jeffrey." "Hold on," replied Michael. Meanwhile, he prepared our lanterns and knives. We decided to stay inside and wait for the police to arrive. The man continued to walk around the house, sometimes looking in the windows. It was terrifying to see him so close and at the same time not know what he was planning to do. Suddenly, I heard a knock on the back door. My heart pounded even harder. Tim looked at me, and we both knew it might be a trap. "We can't open it," Tim whispered. "It could be him." The knocking came again, and this time it was louder. I took the knife and walked slowly to the door. The knock was repeated a third time, and I ventured to ask, "Who is there?" "This is Michael. Open it," sounded from behind the door. I opened the door with relief, and Michael entered the house with several police officers. They immediately began to survey the area around. Tim and I stayed inside, feeling the tension slowly subside. After a few minutes, Michael returned. "We didn't find him," he said, "but we will establish permanent patrols around your house. He will no longer be able to approach unnoticed." It gave us some peace, but I knew this nightmare was not over. The man was out there somewhere in the dark, and I had a feeling he wouldn't stop until he got his way. The police left a few of their men to patrol outside my house, but that didn't do much to ease the tension. For the next few days, I tried to live a normal life, but the fear and anxiety stayed with me constantly. Tim continued to support me, coming every night and staying the night. We became more careful, never went out alone, always kept our phones close at hand. But there was still an invisible fear in the air. One evening, when Tim decided to go home a little early, I was left alone. I was sitting in the living room watching the news when I suddenly heard a strange sound. It sounded like metal screeching. My heart pounded harder, and I slowly got up, taking the knife from the kitchen. I carefully approached the window and looked out. Nothing suspicious. Maybe I just thought it. But when I turned back, the sound repeated. This time he was closer. I decided not to risk it and called Michael. He answered almost immediately. "Michael, I'm hearing strange noises outside the house again. Please send someone." "We're on our way, Jeffrey. Don't leave the house," he said. I locked the door and began to wait. The sounds got louder, and now I could clearly hear it was something metallic moving across the asphalt. My heart was beating so fast I could barely breathe. Suddenly, I heard a knock on the window. I approached and saw the same figure. A man in dark clothes stood by my window and looked straight at me. His face was hidden under his hood, but I could feel his cold gaze. "Who are you? What do you need?" I shouted, trying to hold back my panic. The man did not answer. He just stood and looked at me. This went on for what felt like an eternity. Then he suddenly turned and started to walk away. The police arrived a few minutes later. Michael and his men searched the entire area, but the man was not found again. They decided to keep a few officers on patrol outside my house 24 hours a day. "Jeffrey, we will do everything we can to protect you," Michael said. "But you have to be ready for anything." The next days were tense. Tim and I were on edge, constantly vigilant and trying not to go outside unnecessarily. The cameras continued to record, but there was nothing more suspicious. One day, when I was checking the recordings, a new movement appeared on the screen. It was the same figure, but this time the man came closer to one of the cameras. His face was still hidden, but I saw something that made me catch my breath. He had a tattoo on his arm, an old symbol that I recognized. This symbol belonged to an old sect I had heard about as a child. They were known for their terrible rituals and disappeared decades ago. But what is this symbol doing here? And what does this man want from me? I felt that the thread of this terrible story was beginning to unravel, but there were still no answers. I called Michael and told him about my discovery. He promised to come with an expert to understand everything. This night promised to be even longer and scarier, but I felt that we were finally getting closer to the solution. Michael and the expert he had brought with him arrived near midnight. The expert was Professor Jonathan Gray, a specialist in occult sciences and ancient sects. He reviewed the footage from the cameras and paused the video on the image of the tattoo. "It's very interesting," he said, looking at the footage. "This symbol belongs to one of the most mysterious and dangerous sects in history. They engaged in dark rituals and made human sacrifices, but everyone thought that this sect disappeared in the middle of the last century. What could this mean?" I asked, trying to hold back my panic. "If this sect still exists, that means they could be connected to all the disappearances," Jonathan replied. "Their rituals always required sacrifices. And if this man is one of them, then we are dealing with very dangerous people." Michael looked serious and focused. "We will strengthen security and start an investigation in this direction," he said. "Jeffrey, you need to be very careful. If you see or hear anything suspicious, report it immediately." The next few days, we lived in constant tension. The police patrolled the area but did not notice anything suspicious. Tim and I became even more careful, but the fear did not go away. One evening, when Tim was staying with me again, we heard strange noises coming from the basement. It was something like rustling and screeching. We both froze in place, listening. The sounds were getting louder, and we decided to check what was going on there. We took lanterns and knives, then slowly descended to the basement. My heart was beating so fast that I could feel every beat in my ears. When we opened the basement door, we were greeted by darkness and oppressive silence. "Be careful, Tim," I whispered, as I cautiously moved forward. We checked every nook and cranny but found nothing suspicious. The sounds disappeared as suddenly as they appeared. We decided to go back up when we suddenly noticed something strange on the basement wall. It was another symbol similar to the one we saw on the man's hand. The symbol was drawn in chalk and looked quite fresh. My heart froze. Someone was in our basement and left this sign, but how did he get here? "It looks like the symbol we saw in the video," Tim said, looking around the wall. "Someone was here, and it's very bad." We immediately notified Michael. He and Jonathan arrived within minutes. Jonathan examined the symbol carefully and said, "This is definitely the work of the same sect. They leave these signs as a warning. This means that they are watching you and may be planning something bigger." Michael looked worried but determined. "We will increase the number of patrols and install additional cameras. We have to find these people and stop them before they do more damage." The night passed in tension, but without new incidents. The next day, Tim and I decided to go to the library to try to find more information about this sect. We knew the answer might lie in history, and we were ready to learn everything we could to stop this nightmare. Researching in the library was not as easy a task as we had hoped. We found several old books and newspaper articles that mentioned the sect. They described gruesome rituals and disappearances, but there was no mention that the sect still existed. Tim was concentrating on going through the old records when he suddenly found something interesting. "Jeffrey, look at this," he said, showing me an old photo. It featured a group shot of people standing in dark clothing with hoods. "These are exactly the same people. And look at this symbol on their hands." The photo confirmed our fears. The sect did exist and may still be active. We made several copies of the pictures and decided to go back home to show them to Michael and Jonathan. When we got back, Michael and Jonathan were already waiting for us. We showed them the materials we found, and they seemed excited. "This gives us more reason to believe that the sect is active again," Jonathan said. "We must be very careful and prepare for any possible attacks." That night, we decided not to risk it and stayed in the house without going outside. The police increased patrols, and we tried to remain calm, but the sense of danger persisted. Around midnight, I heard strange noises outside the window. It was a rustling similar to the one we heard earlier. I took the flashlight and slowly walked to the window. Outside, I saw several figures in dark clothes. They slowly moved towards the house. I immediately called Michael, and he promised to be there in a few minutes. But we knew that this time might not be enough. Tim and I took our knives and prepared to defend ourselves. The figures were getting closer, and I could feel my heart beating faster. Suddenly, one of them started knocking on the door. We locked ourselves inside and tried not to make any noise. "We know you're there," said a muffled voice from behind the door. "You cannot escape." I felt fear wash over me. We had to hold on until the police arrived. We stood at the door, ready for any development. Suddenly, the door started shaking, and we realized that they were trying to break in. Michael and the police arrived at the last moment. They quickly surrounded the house and stopped the attackers. Some of them managed to escape, but several were detained. Jonathan examined the detainees and confirmed that they were indeed members of the same sect. "This is only part of their group," he said. "We have to find the others and stop them once and for all." That night was the scariest of my life, but I felt that we had taken a step towards the solution. We knew the fight wasn't over yet, but now we had a better chance of stopping this nightmare. We spent the following days preparing for the final step. Michael, Jonathan, and the police began a massive investigation, trying to find the place where the other members of the sect are hiding. We knew that every day could be decisive. One evening, Michael received important information. They found an old abandoned house on the outskirts of town, which witnesses said was frequented by suspicious people. This could be their storage. We decided to act immediately. Michael, Jonathan, myself, and several policemen went to the place. When we arrived, we saw an old building that looked abandoned, but there was light inside. We quietly approached the house and saw that people in dark clothes were gathering inside. They performed some kind of ritual. Jonathan confirmed that it was the same sect. "We have to be careful," Michael said. "They can be armed and dangerous." We entered the house slowly, trying not to attract attention. As we approached, one of the sect members noticed us and started shouting. A fight began. The police reacted quickly and started detaining the sect members. Me and Tim stayed behind, watching everything. The fight was short, but intense. The police were able to detain everyone present. Jonathan examined the place and found a lot of evidence that confirmed their rituals and the connection with the disappearances of people. "It must end here and now," he said, surveying the tools and symbols. "We stopped them, but we have to be vigilant so that this sect does not reborn again." When we got home, I felt a heavy stone fall from my shoulders. We were able to stop this nightmare and stop the sect that was terrorizing our city. Michael thanked us for the help and support. Tim hugged me, and I felt like I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. This terrible story is over, and we were able to return to normal life. But I knew that this experience would forever remain in my memory. We went through a real nightmare, but we were able to persevere and win. And now we were ready for any challenges that life could throw up, that life could throw up, that life could throw up.